Hey, welcome back to the channel, everybody. I hope you're having a great week, and I hope you're doing well. So go ahead, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. It's a terrific way to help out the channel. But with all that out of the way, let's see what we got today, guys. We are live.
Project Mockingbird was the project of the deep state to control us via the media. But it worked much better in an era where there were 3 broadcast networks. You didn't have to control that many properties. The reason that the narrative broke was because Goliath was focused on controlling the mainstream media properties, and it didn't think it had to care about the off Joe Rogan man cave stuff. Why should it care what a podcast was? Who cares what gets said on pirate radio, right? But that mattered a lot because people, when they realized they were being lied to and they were doing harm to themselves because of those lies, tuned out the mainstream media and they started searching for information elsewhere. The punchline is, if you want to beat the deep state, what you need to do is you need to drag Goliath onto territory he doesn't understand. That's where we win.
100%. You know, and find alternative forms of media like Joe Rogan or like something like this.
From New York to Brazil, Buenos Aires, and then Antarctica without ever coming up to the surface for air. And you can do it all at way more than 1,000 miles an hour on magnetic levitation trains, otherwise called maglev. One thing he told me, he went from Virginia to Los Angeles in 45 minutes. Do the math, 3,000 miles an hour. Most people don't even believe that there's a tunnel network. There are there are hundreds of thousands of miles of tunnel systems.
Yeah, it's nothing new to this channel.
The law of substitution. Now, the law of substitution, I've had many of my graduates tell me this has been the most important law they've ever learned. It's a very simple law, and it's based on a fact that the conscious mind can only hold one thought at a time, positive or negative. If you want to get rid of a negative thought, the mind is not like a vacuum. It doesn't stay empty. If you want to get rid of a negative thought, you have to knock it out, if you like, with a positive thought. Is that you can replace one thought with another. You can replace one thought with another. And if you do that consistently, and if you replace any negative thought, any fear thought, any anxiety thought, any self-limiting thought, any negative expectations, anything that's holding you back, any fear of failure, lack, poverty, rejection, loss, or anything else, if you replace it with a desire thought, and this is the key, fear versus desire. If you keep your mind on what you want and keep it off of what you don't want, as you dwell on your desire, your fears diminish.
Just a little more on the manifestation type of thing.
Man, like,
seems to work.
So, you ever heard of Panda? Like I was telling you, Panda. So you got Panda Panda is a secret code for a certain thing. And so when it comes down to that certain thing, what it is you basically have a certain nerve in your rectum, and if you touch that nerve, you can turn a person into an animal, you can turn a person into whatever you want them to be if you just hold them down. So, pretty much, when you see black eyes like Blueface, and you know, got beat up, but he didn't get beat up where you thought he got beat up. He got beat up somewhere else. Okay? And so the eyes come out, and they call them panda eyes.
Yeah, I don't think that boy crazy. I think that boy know what he's talking about, because there was an episode he did on Jamie Foxx, and he had 2 black eyes. Man, they about did that show to overshadow the fact that they did that panda ritual on that boy to cover up them bruises on his eyes, man. Y'all go look up panda rituals. These celebrities know what they into. This shit is all a game, man. That boy know what he talking about. He explained that stuff too good.
Yeah, it's a dark and twisted rabbit hole. If you haven't been down it, tread lightly.
Selling the child for organs or to a brothel.
For the mother, selling the child as an organ donor.
Do you know the final price of the organs? how much a child like that costs in Europe?
Yes, I do.
All in all, how much is the heart, for example?
I know the liver costs 70,000 Polish zlotys. It's a black market. So it's obvious only wealthy people who have a lot of money are involved. If their child is ill, this is their way to ensure its longer life.
What's the greatest demand?
The liver, the heart, the retina, the eyes, the retina.
Do you know the price of the retina or the heart?
The heart is worth almost 70,000, but euros.
What's your approach to selling a child?
Honestly, if it wasn't for this child, who is merchandise, I wouldn't be able to do it. But the thing is, if there's a possibility to earn quite good money on it, why not? They offer 50 to 150,000. It depends.
Do you believe it's a good price, 50 for a child?
Without intermediaries, I'd say it's enough.
Enough for what?
To make up for those 9 months. Where else could a young person like me earn 50,000 in 9 months?
Have you thought what you'd buy with that money?
No, but if I could afford it, perhaps a nice car?
A car. A nice car.
Georgia Tan kidnapped and then sold an estimated 5,000 babies between 1924 and 1950. 5,000. This is certainly beyond shocking and unsettling to hear, but how she got away with it, and how she got away with it for so long, only adds to the terrifying nature of this truly staggering story, which is actually hard to believe is 100% true. Tan pulled off her brazen scheme through operating the Tennessee Children's Home Society, a society which, on the surface, was doing the Lord's work, finding homes for orphaned children. In reality, it worked as a cover for Tan to funnel children into her care, only for her to turn around and sell them on the black market for extreme profit. In the nearly 30 years Tan and the society were in operation, she managed to kidnap and sell an estimated 5,000 babies. These weren't orphaned children placed under her care. They were stolen right from under their parents' noses. How? How could anyone get away with kidnapping and selling children for nearly 30 years right here in America? She did it with help from friends in high places. She took children who came from poor families, for the simple reason that poor families at the time didn't have the necessary resources to search for one of their children should they go missing. If families did file a report, Georgia Tan would have it handled by her close friend E.H. Crump, a powerful tycoon and the so-called boss of Memphis. Crump would make sure the reports of missing children were ignored. She also had an elaborate system for taking newborn babies from hospitals and mental wards, bribing doctors and nurses to help protect the children, and then tell their unsuspecting parents that their baby was stillborn. Tan would take off with the baby, with the child's parents believing their newborn to be deceased. She even had a system for snatching children right off the street. She took children from churches or daycare centers while they played with their friends. They'd end up in the arms of a uniformed social worker under Tan's employ, and they'd never be seen by their birth parents again. Once the children were under her care, and their parents were none the wiser, Tan would wipe their identities and sell them to couples looking to adopt, leaving them completely in the dark about where the child came from by falsifying or destroying their documents. Tan pocketed millions of dollars selling children to out-of-state couples, charging a $5,000 premium on out-of-state adoptions. Almost 90% of her sales, which in this context, sales is a truly disgusting word, went to wealthy couples in New York and Los Angeles who could afford the steep pricing of Tan's services, including actress Joan Crawford, who adopted her twin daughters from Tan. It should be noted none of the adoptive parents had any chance to suspect what they were doing was wrong. On its face, Tan's operation was a legitimate adoption agency. Of course, simply adopting a baby and then never having questions about where that child came from isn't possible. But if the adoptive parents ever questioned Tan about issues that arose, things like missing birth certificates or clearly falsified medical histories, Tan had an answer. If the new parents ever had any suspicion that anything fishy was going on, Tan would threaten them with legal action through one of her major accomplices, family court judge Camille Kelly. Judge Kelly used her position of power to sanction Tan's activities and threaten the adoptive parents with taking away their adoptive children if they continued to make a fuss or ask questions. They would also be threatened with being roped into whatever legal ramifications Tan may or may not have faced. I mean, they did use her services, so technically they were involved in an illegal enterprise themselves. And here was a judge telling them they were complicit. Needless to say, this blackmail coming from the US judicial system itself made a lot of folks go quiet. Tan was so powerful and wealthy, so highly regarded as a steward of ridding adoption of its negative stigma at the time, and so well connected. No accusations or rumblings of misconduct ever stuck. The story is so insane that it's hard to even frame it or tell it in a way that makes any sense whatsoever, but it's completely real. It happened, and it affected thousands of lives right here in America. To make it even more insane and unbelievable, one of those children that Tan and her agency kidnapped and sold to unsuspecting adoptive parents was professional wrestling legend, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And in the end, Tan and Judge Kelly and E.H. Crump and everyone else who knew it was truly going on at the Tennessee Children's Home Society got away with it. None of them ever faced charges. Tan died of cancer at 59. Judge Kelly and E.H. Crump both died shortly thereafter in 1954 and 1955 respectively. None of the children they kidnapped were ever returned to their biological parents.
Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more of history's weirdness that you won't find in your textbooks. All those textbooks that you had to give back. No one has their textbooks anymore, right? I don't have mine. Anyway, there's this video here, there's this one here, there's more stuff here, there's more good stuff. If you liked it, stick around.
Yeah, nothing new under the sun. Trafficking's been around for a long time, and
first off, you guys do know
sick.
the Pentagon has a budget for film. Like, there's a whole department in the Pentagon. I know that. That's a fact. There you go. That's all you need to know. There's an entire department in the Pentagon. They get involved with films, and they get involved with films for the purpose of propaganda. They always have.
What movies
I should have said Pentagon instead of CIA. Tons of them. I should show you the list. You should pull it up. It's
Right,
wild. Yeah,
please.
Pentagon Department for Hollywood. Tons of them.
I have to
Even
report
Transformers. Even Transformers, like, you know, because they're concerned about certain narratives. They get involved with, like, World War films, like, how are we telling a story about history? Usually it's because we're lying about what we did or trying not to make Americans aware of the crimes against humanity that we commit overseas, you know?
Yeah, the Pentagon has funded some films. Black Hawk Down, Red Dawn, GoldenEye.
The more you know. So now you understand your experience in theaters is what your government wants you to think. They want you to think that this is how things happen, and it's usually not at all how things have actually happened. It's crazy. You grow up in school and you think propaganda belongs to the East or something. Propaganda is the name of the game of our government. They, again, never want you to look into the crimes that they are committing, so they're constantly trying to sell themselves as the good guys. They did the most. They rescued and saved the world. They've never done anything bad overseas. If you are living and you believe that the American government hasn't committed crimes against humanity, you had to wake up from the propaganda. You just got to, you got to learn real history, not what was taught to you in a textbook. That's all just propaganda, you know? We've done horrific things. Horrific things.
Absolutely. Without question.
What is wrong with ibuprofen?
So ibuprofen is an NSAID. It's a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. What NSAIDs do is they cut off the inflammatory cascade. And when you get injured, it takes about 300 days, give or take, for full collagen production and stability to set in. It's a whole cascade. And the first 2 weeks of that 10 days to 14 days of that healing cascade need to go to fruition for the rest of that cascade to happen for you to end up ultimately laying down really healthy, strong, stable collagen. And if you cut it off in the first few days with ice and NSAIDs, which that's what is usually doctor recommended, right? Elevate, ice, NSAIDs. Yep. You basically shoot yourself in the foot. And so they've known since the 90s that when you give somebody, like they were doing studies in rabbits where they would pith the cartilage in their knees and then they would give them high doses of ibuprofen and the cartilage just would not regenerate. Orthopedic surgeons know not to give ibuprofen because it actually inhibits bone healing after a fracture. And then there's a whole litany of problems that it causes within the body, the cardiovascular system and, you know, the gut and so on. And then when you're on high doses of NSAIDs for a long period of time, if you discontinue them abruptly, you can have a rebound effect where you end up in more inflammation. And so it's a really slippery slope that I think, especially like college or even high school students, athletes get.
We did that a lot in college.
Yeah, there's a lot of NSAIDs and ice, and it's just a really bad way to train your immune system to react to an injury.
You know, you don't consider that, but painkillers,
If you
That's the
buy
greatest thing.
the maps put out by National Geographic, 1957, there's a map of Hitler staking in 1939, 1937, his territory in Antarctica. He sent polar expeditions out. This book says the secret expeditionary force was headed by Captain Reicher, R-I-T-S-C-H-E-R, and took place 1937 and 38, their first expeditions. Added to the credence to these bases are the remarks of Mr. von Ribbentrop, this book says, at the outbreak of the war, World War II, in accordance with Germany's long-range political strategy, we have taken into firm possession the Antarctic area called the New Swabia, and it will be and ensure a safe retreat in case of necessity. And this book has maps of the Byrd expedition going down after the war. They said Antarctica would be an ideal place for bases. There was no rust, no germs, no illnesses or decomposition, no bacillus, no flies, no bugs, and not even a common cold would survive. It would be a perfect place to live. Well, when Admiral Byrd got home, he was met by James Forrestal, the Secretary of Defense. 2 years later, Forrestal was murdered, thrown out of a window at Bethesda Hospital 2 months after he got a Distinguished Medal from Eisenhower. Forrestal was with Admiral Byrd on consultations. Byrd went down to see if Eisenhower and the Russians were correct that Adolf Hitler was down in Antarctica building secret weapons and so forth. All of the papers of Admiral Byrd are locked up top secret to this day. They're not available of what he saw, and right after he was met by Forrestal, shortly after that, Forrestal was murdered. And I'll give you the references on some of the books on the death of Forrestal and the meeting with Admiral Byrd. First of all, the Guinness Book of Records at the end of World War II, the greatest unsolved robbery was at the end of the war when the Reichsbank treasury was emptied of all its money and the bank vaults in Berlin were completely emptied out, and the headquarters for the World Monetary Fund in Basel, Switzerland, found that they had $15 billion in circulation that shouldn't exist. There was forged money. The code name was Operation Bernhardt. There were expert forgers. And so that this is the kind of money that could finance the operations that they're describing in this book.
Now that is very interesting information.
Did you know that the Knights Templars had one of the largest fleets in the world? Did you know that one of their symbols is the skull and bones? Did you know that on every grave of the Knights Templars in Europe is the skull and bones? Did you know that when the Templars were destroyed by the Pope and the King of France, the entire fleet escaped and became the pirates? Didn't you ever wonder why the pirates were called the Brotherhood? Didn't you ever wonder why they could all sail into the same port and never fight against each other? Didn't you ever wonder where the Templars' fleet went? Didn't you ever wonder where the skull and crossbones came from? Didn't you ever wonder why the Russell Trust at Yale University is called the Skull and Bones? George Bush is a member. He's a Knights Templar. And many other great men who have occupied high positions of this government. Their goal is revenge for the persecution of men of intellect and science throughout the Middle and Dark Ages by the church, by the kings and queens, by the governments, and by the ignorant mob. That's why they want to destroy all existing governments, destroy all existing religions, and put the shackles on the mob.
100%. That's a really twisted rabbit hole.
Is it just me, or does the world seem as if it's losing its colour? There's even been images of this taken in 2021 compared to 2023. Who remembers seeing the sun as a yellow ball of energy? Now we just have this white light. Like, what are they doing? Personally, I think this is the result of weather manipulation, geoengineering, EMF towers, and pollution. As a child, I remember sitting in nature and you would be covered in insects. Now, when you go into nature, you hardly see any. Let me know if you could.
Yeah, the yellow sun, 100%. It's gone.
Great. This behind me is a picture of the aura, which is the bioelectric magnetic field of the human hands. And you can see right here, this is your palm chakra, Our palm chakras are the center of abundance and how we give and receive energy. So like Reiki practitioners like myself is how we channel energy from our heart chakras down our arms and out through our hands into that other person, ourselves, into pets and animals. But what do you really notice about the fingers here? What are there? Your fingernails. Look how much light is coming out of your fingernails. This is why nail polish, acrylic nails, gel manicures are a thing. Because it disrupts and dampens your light. It lessens your connection to source, which is light. And not only that, light is information. So always having your fingernails and your toes done is harmful. And that's not the only reason. If you haven't done any research on the chemicals that are absorbed into your bloodstream just 10 minutes after getting your nails done, I would suggest doing a little study on that. Do you know what an endocrine disruptor is? It imbalances and throws off your hormones, your thyroid. It can also cause reproductive problems.
Interesting. To all the women out there doing that, that's something to consider.
Have you ever found it weird that there's an Egyptian pyramid on the US dollar bill, and on top of that, the Illuminati eye sits right at the top? If you zoom in on the bill, you'll notice a lot of strange things. Devil-like faces, flying saucers, and there's even a hidden phrase written in tiny letters below the pyramid, carrying a terrifying message. It says, Novus Ordo Seclorum, which means New World Order. I bet you don't even know what that really means, yet countless politicians from all nations have already spoken about this new world order. The truth is, for hundreds of years, a plan has been in motion, put in place by a family you all know, the family considered the most powerful in the world. They control everything around you from the shadows. Apparently, every year, they hold secret meetings with the leaders of each nation to track their progress on the plan, their ultimate goal, to fully dominate all nations, erase all religions, and create a single type of human, one that moves in the same direction, completely submissive to this elite. You need to wake up fast before it's too late.
Yep, pretty much. The mainstream news watching
I recently
type of person.
received some information from an inside source, a mother in Alberta, Canada, who went to her family doctor, and her family doctor is warning her that all of the childhood schedule is going to be switched to mRNA. What does this mean? This means that they are going to be using children, our children, as science experiments. They are going to be using a technology that is designed to genetically modify humanity. So if you are still taking your children to wellness visits, I highly encourage you to start doing your research and to stop following the science that is paid for. The science is paid for. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is a very large campaign letting parents get caught up on the childhood schedule. So for anybody that fell behind from 2020 to 24, they're going to be encouraging these parents to take their children to get updated. Please do your research.
Yeah, they're not necessary, really.
And she is a medical professional who has insight on information that you're going to want to hear. So go right ahead, Tina. Tell us what you've learned.
Okay. Since the Affordable Care Act came out, we are now, as nurses, required to ask every single patient when they come to the hospital if you've had your flu vaccine or your pneumococcal vaccine. If you say no to either one of those, in the computer, an order will generate that says we need to give you this vaccine. We don't need to speak to a doctor. It's hospital policy. It's now health department policy that we now have to give you the vaccine. Even if you came to the hospital with a stubbed toe, you will be offered both vaccines if you meet requirements, which just about everybody meets requirements for flu vaccine. And most people over the age of 65 will meet the pneumococcal vaccine. Even if you come to the hospital with a stub toe, you are going to be given this vaccine. You have the right to say no. If you say no, they just check it off as refused. This was never like this years ago. This is a new thing.
And tell me what we were discussing before about surgery and your admission that you hadn't had these recent vaccines. Tell me about this protocol, because I don't think that people, in fact I know that there are many people that are not aware of this.
When you go to the hospital, if you need surgery, you need a knee replacement surgery, first they're going to ask you if you've had the vaccines. You're going to say no. Then they're going to say, well, you need to sign this consent. If you're going to have surgery, you need to sign a consent. In the consent, there's a word called biogenics. If you sign the consent saying, I consent for you to give me biogenics, that basically means that they can give you anything that they deem necessary, including vaccines.
Remember that.
So if you say you didn't get a flu shot, it's flu season, and you sign the consent that says, I agree to biogenics, they will give you a vaccine even when you're under anesthesia because you already signed the consent.
So you might not even know you received the vaccine,
Correct.
Is that correct?
Unless you go and get your medical records, you will not know that you got a flu vaccine. They may tell you at the end, oh, by the way, you're now covered, you got the flu vaccine or you got the pneumococcal vaccine. But 2 people now have reported to me last week saying that they got the vaccine, they did not want the vaccine, they didn't know that word biogenics meant that they're going to get a vaccine because vaccine falls under the title of biogenics. It's new terminology that I myself just realized. So
this is profound.
This is
so how can people, with your insight, protect themselves from being vaccinated against their wishes?
You can, when you sign consent for surgery, you can specifically say no vaccines. I don't want this. You can write an initial after what you say you do not want, and they have to honor that. And if they don't honor it, they can be sued.
Right. So we do need to be educated to protect ourselves.
Correct.
So anytime you go to the hospital,
yes,
you should be aware of their policies.
Oh, absolutely.
And you said it was biogenics?
The word biogenics is now being used. In the past, it used to be a consent that basically said we could give you blood products if we feel you need it. We could give you, other medications if we feel you need it. But now with the word biogenics, it's now including vaccines.
Profound. Thank you so much for sharing your truth with us, because this is information that's absolutely going to be saving lives and making a big difference. Thank you so much.
No problem.
For that reason alone, I wouldn't go get surgery. Since COVID, I don't fucking trust any doctor.
I'll put my biases right out there. I think Justin Trudeau is Castro's son. Is it really Trudeau's fault if he's Castro's son? Like, I don't believe in the sins of the father, right? I don't think he really should necessarily have to live his life burdened by that if it was true. Like, I can understand why someone would want to hide that. The real question has always been for me, why is this conspiracy theory reported on it the way that it was? Let's say it's not true. Okay, fine. But if you go and you look at any of the press coverage of this conspiracy theory, they make you believe through their reporting that anyone who believes it must be truly nuts. And then what follows is the most surface level thing that takes every official communication at state value and doesn't even look at the evidence that conspiracy theorists are actually analyzing. They'll say Trudeau's mother didn't even visit Cuba until 4 years after he was born. But that's not the conspiracy. The conspiracy theory is that in the flight logs, that one trip that was logged as Caribbean Island and doesn't have a country name, unlike every single other thing in the log, that was Cuba. The conspiracy theory is that maybe it was when she went to his house in France. Like, that's the conspiracy. They literally don't mention it. There are reasonable ways to go after it, but the way they've gone after it is to pretend that you're insane if you believe this conspiracy theory.
Isn't that just about every conspiracy theory?
The term conspiracy theory itself and conspiracy theorist was invented by the CIA and used and pushed through their media plans to discredit anybody who questioned the results of the original JFK investigation.
Yeah. Fuck Justin Trudeau, man. Fuck that guy.
This is exactly why I don't watch sports. There's a reason why the Romans used to say that if you want to keep people distracted, you simply give them bread and circuses. And it is because they knew that if people were fed and entertained, then they wouldn't question anything and they wouldn't think for themselves. And you see, modern day sports is the exact same thing. People yell at TVs, they memorize stats, they argue over other players, and they even wear another man's last name on their back to vicariously live through them. And you see all of these things happen because they want to keep us distracted and weak. Because when you have something great going on in your life, you simply do not have time to partake in bread and circuses. So you can either be your own biggest cheerleader and create something worth building, or you can live through other people and be a cheerleader on the sideline for them.
Yeah. Still shameful to boo another country's national anthem, though.
This
Do
is
better,
a message
Canada.
for all the Americans watching certain Canadians boo your national anthem. As a Canadian living in Texas, I would formally like to apologize for those guys. I'm going to try and explain things so it makes sense on their behalf, even though I don't think I should, but I'm just trying to kind of get the knowledge out there. Most Canadians are absolutely broke, and we only have state-owned media, which is government-owned, government-paid by our tax money. So the media is pumping out that Canadians are well off, that they're so educated, that they're happy, and a lot of these NPC drones believe this. And so now, because of failures of Justin Trudeau and his Liberal Party, they're basically using Trump as a scapegoat as to why the failures have happened. And most of these NPC drones believe it. So there's an economist out of Calgary who basically did a comparison of certain provinces and certain US states. And Ontario, which is our business capital, only comes in 5th poorest US state. And Quebec would be the 2nd. I'm from Alberta. We're only slightly behind Texas and Minnesota, and I'm going to show the numbers. And so you have to understand that most of these people are now just reacting, and you'll see them online saying things like, at least we have free health care. No, we don't. It's taxed. At least I don't have to take out a second mortgage to afford my health care. They can't even afford their first mortgage or even their rent. Most people are taking out loans just to get by with basic needs such as food and electricity. So you have very angry, demented people who have now lost absolute all reality because of Justin Trudeau and the political climate that is going on in Canada. And I just wanted to let you guys know that it's not all of us. It is the demented, like Trudeau supporters. So let me just show you the numbers. So if we compare GDPs of provinces to US states, Ontario would be the 5th poorest and Quebec would be the 2nd poorest. Ontario's GDP per capita is $59,700, and only 4 states, Alabama, Arkansas, West Virginia, and Mississippi, are lower, and they're not even that much lower. Then Quebec, with a GDP capita of $54,000, only exceeds Mississippi, and these are the guys that were booing you last night. Now, I'm from Alberta, and our GDP is $82,000, and we're only slightly behind Texas, and kind of the similar with Minnesota. Now, not only is the economy in the shitter in Canada, but it's also very hard to get jobs, regular jobs, because we kind of ruined the economy with the illegal influx of illegals, and they're being hired first because the government's giving them incentivized, tax breaks if they do. So if you ever come across one of these Canadians, just know that they're not all right. We have a mental health crisis up north, and I finally now realize, living in the United States, why people say God bless Texas, God bless America, because God truly did bless this country with amazing people, amazing places, and I just wanted to apologize on behalf of those ding-dongs in Canada.
Yeah, 100%. That was very well put, and I have to agree. The people who are, I don't want to say all of them, but I'm going to say a good chunk, the lion's share of people who are still watching sports, still following the bread and circuses, are also the same ones that are drinking up the mainstream Kool-Aid. The same ones that still think voting Liberal is a good fucking idea. The same ones who don't know a goddamn thing about Mark Carney but are gonna vote for the fucking guy anyways, because that's where we are in Canada. People are fucking stupid, and it's just where we're at. All I can do is apologize and let you know that that's not the case for a lot of us. I do believe that the majority of us, the silent majority, are conservative minded. We only have the best intentions, and all we want is a job. The whole reason I started this YouTube channel is because I can't find a fucking job anywhere. This is Canada. This is Alberta. But unless I'm Indian, I'm not finding a fucking job, man. This country has been invaded by Indians. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. The city that I live in, you can't go anywhere and not see them. That's just all that they're everywhere. That's all they are. Ukrainians and Indians. Okay, like they are replacing Canadians. And I don't care if this makes me sound however the fuck the left wants it to make me sound. But this is the reality of it. This is the truth of what we're going through. We are so divided in this country, it is not even funny. And you know, we were so close to getting this fucking clown out of Parliament. So close to getting rid of Trudeau. And then this whole tariff situation came over, and now no one's paying attention to the scandals anymore. They're only paying attention to the tariffs and Trump. And the Liberals have now turned him into this boogeyman that they can try to use to win the election, because now they have a common enemy that the people can rally behind. And this Team Canada bullshit. You know, all these same Liberals who trampled on us during the pandemic, who froze our bank accounts, who told us that we were a fringe minority who should not be tolerated because we wouldn't take the vaccine, now want us to link arms with them because Trump is orange man fucking bad. Man, fuck you is what I say to that. Fuck you. So anyways, not to get too polarized on that, but that's just what we're going through here. Life sucks in Canada right now, guys. It is what it is. But that's all I got today, guys. I want to thank you for coming and hanging out with me and listening to my rant here. But check me out on 80 After Dark tomorrow, where we're going to lighten the mood a little bit and just try to get on a better vibe. But until then, see you in the next one. 80 Canadian, signing off.